Hello and welcome to another EVs and Beyond podcast slash video slash again. I don't know what we're doing half the time these days. Thanks for watching again. Hopefully you've already liked and subscribed. The buttons are somewhere down there. They'll pop up, I believe. Don't forget to do that. It's the best way you can support the channel and also have us bring you the latest news, videos, and reviews on electric vehicles in New Zealand. And hopefully you're sticking around because there will be in the next couple of days, I hope, a fairly cool review on the Hyundai iONIQ 5. I've been driving that a little bit, got a little bit of attention online, and I've really been enjoying that car. But we're going to talk about a couple of other cars today. And if you do get the magazine, which you can download for free from evsandbeyond.co.nz, in the October issue, you will see our cover cars are the BMW iX3 and the Ford Mustang Mach-E. That's a bit of a mouthful, that name. Now, the reason we got that is a Kiwi-based motoring journalist, Dave McLeod, had to go up to the UK for some family stuff, and while he was there, he drove some of these great cars, and happily, he managed to write the stories up for us. So I've got Dave on the line. I'm going to bring him into the room. Hi there, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Richard. How you doing?
Yeah, not too badly. And how about yourself? Must be interesting in the UK at the moment. You've probably got a little more freedom than we do. I think they've kind of pulled most of the restraints off, where we're fumbling around on level 3 and level 2, depending on where you are.
Yeah, it's actually quite bizarre. It's like two different worlds and two different approaches to this COVID thing. But there's a lot of freedom here. Providing you're double vaxxed, you get the keys to the city and the keys to wherever you want to go. Really, it's quite interesting. Maybe
But
events in the
importantly,
future. Maybe.
yes. Well, we'll see what happens over the summer here, I guess. But importantly, you got the keys to a couple of rather cool electric vehicles. How's that been? I mean, touring around the UK in EVs. What's the infrastructure like there? Has it been hard to charge?
Actually, the infrastructure is really good. There's a variety of fast chargers. A lot of them are 50 kilowatt or 50 volts. But they're simple. You just you go in, you just plug on in, tap your credit card, fill on up, and away you go. And there's one around the corner from me, even in Pinehurst, which is I'm surprised they're not stolen by now. Actually,
That's in somewhere around
oh
Swindon,
yeah,
I'm
sunny
guessing.
Swindon. So once you navigate the Magic Roundabout, well, all roads lead to the Magic Roundabout, of course.
Have you stumbled into any higher powered infrastructure? I know Ionity's got quite a bit over there. Anything a little more than 50 kilowatts?
To be honest, I've just sort of stumbled into whatever I've done. I haven't hunted out anything of any particular high power, just whatever's closest and plugged in, and managed to, get a haircut and have lunch and just, it's sometimes it's slower at 50 volts, but it's okay. I've got plenty to do here.
Now, let's talk about the Mustang first. It's been in the last week here, we've had confirmation from Simon Rutherford, the managing director of Ford New Zealand, that it's a kind of a when, not if situation with the Mach-E in New Zealand. The problem being that it's just so darn popular overseas, but they are saying it is going to come. Should we be excited about this car coming to New Zealand? I mean, how good is that Mustang?
Absolutely, you should be. Look, the first thing I'll say for the people that love the old V8s and that sort of stuff, they're going to hate it. They're going to go, "This is not a Mustang. Should never have a Mustang badge." Blah blah blah. But realistically, the Mustang in its V8 form is going to die moving forward. So if you want to keep this Mustang name going, you've got to adapt. You've got to change it, and basically a 5-seater SUV or crossover is the way that it's going to have to go for the moment.
How does it sit in size? I mean, I think it's hard from here to get an idea of the size and the nature of the vehicle. I mean, is it the size of the Model 3? Is it the size of an I-Pace? The size of something bigger? What kind of...
Yeah, it's
Can you
the
put it
sort
in
of size of
context?
a I-Pace, size of a Macan. It's not a full size SUV. It's more of a sort of, but it's bigger than a crossover. So it's that sort of Hyundai Ioniq size. But not quite fully. It's actually shorter in length than the Mustang itself by about
Mm.
it's not by huge, but slightly shorter, and taller by about 200 mils. So it's 1. 1.8 or 1.6 or something in height. So it's stocky, but not, it's not huge. It's big,
Mm.
but not huge.
Yeah. How does it work? I mean, how do you think it's designed? I mean, firstly, I think it looks great. Not sure of your take on that, but overall, does it work? I mean, is the interior well laid out? Is it a well thought through vehicle, or is it a bit of a compliance car? Do you think?
I think if you design wise, I really like it. I driving it feels like a muscle car just because of the bonnet's still got the long nose to it, shorter than a regular Mustang, but it's still got a long bonnet. Nice curvature to the bonnet too. When you look in the in the side mirrors, you can actually see some nice muscular haunches out the back, so that's kind of good. The If you were to sort of draw a line sort of below the sort of belt line and look up, you go, well, that's actually very Mustangish. So it's like an elevated Mustang to a degree. The interior is very minimalistic and very modern. So you've got this massive screen that those of you that have driven a Tesla or would be sort of easily acquainted with. It's got that.
Mm.
It still maintains the double cowl, but it is quite hidden by that massive 15.5-inch screen. So in a sort of portrait style. So, like I said, those of you that have driven a Tesla will be sort of very au fait with that sort of layout. The um, the instrument cluster, sorry, is quite narrow. I think it looks almost like a head-up display. It's quite skinny
Mm.
and I think it's 12, maybe 10 or 12 inches, but quite narrow. And it has everything you need, and is can be adapted, but it's it's less of a feature like the old one that has the big, even the new screen on there.
So they've kind of given you like the Model 3, the big screen in the middle with everything on it, but then they've also given you that kind of basic information for driving on a little panel in front of your steering wheel,
That's
basically.
correct. It's got traffic sign recognition. It's got your gear selection. It's got basic information, and it does pop up with your navigation if you're navigating as well.
Hmm. And how does it drive? I mean, I guess that's the important question. Does it? I can't imagine it feels like a traditional Mustang to drive, but I mean, how does it feel compared to other electric vehicles?
Great question, and I think it feels very similar to other electric vehicles. It's got two sort of ways to drive. One is just your regular drive without a one pedal drive, and so there's less regen. It's more of a flow to the drive, um, and then you can go into one pedal driving, which then really gives you that regen, that automatic slow down when you lift off the accelerator, and that feels a little bit more restricted, a little bit more compromised. But the bonus of that, really, when you come to a complete stop, if you're providing you're using you sort of looking ahead, it will brake hold. So you don't
Mm,
actually have to touch the brake virtually at all. So it's that way. There's also the driving modes where you can go into whisper and comfort, which is something else. And then also there's a sound generator that gives it a little bit more of a heftiness. It's not a V8 sound, but it just gives you a little bit more of um, a sense of power, and it does feel powerful to drive. The
mm,
0 to 100 is, I think it's 6 seconds. No, 5.8 seconds. So it's the same as the 2.3 liter turbo. About a
mm,
second slower than the new line of V8s. So it's not bad, and there will be a GT version that's going to come out, which will really be hot on the heels of the V8. So it
mm,
feels
mm.
quick. The instant torque is there. The handling is a little bit bouncy on the rebound, so it's quite absorbent on the road, but does give you a little bit of a bounce if you really if
So,
you're
so it
able
is an
to.
SUV. And it does drive a little bit like a sporty
Yeah, well, it is
SUV.
2 tons of SUV, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
But
Did you get any idea of the range? How far did you find it would go?
I think the range is for, sorry, 330, yeah, 335 miles, which is, I think, 450, 470 or something. It might actually be more, but yeah, yeah, they're claiming 335, and providing you put it into sort of regen and it eats up the miles a little bit on the motorway, but around town it seems to hold quite nicely.
Yeah. On the motorway, did you try the driver assistance features? I think they've got some kind of system in there. I'm not sure, it's called Super Cruise or something like that. It's got some kind of enhanced cruise control. Does that work in the UK? Is that operating?
All seemed kind of normal and natural, to be honest. Adaptive
Mhm.
cruise, really.
Yeah.
You, I couldn't see any particular, lane change or anything like that. It's very aware of its surroundings, which is makes it very modern. It's a very modern SUV crossover. The cabin space, for those that like the restriction of the regular Mustang, yeah, it's very spacious because of
Mm.
there's really just two panels. Well, one panel if you want to be sort of frank about it. So there's actually, it is a genuine five-seater, yeah, 4.35 seater.
Mhm. Now, Ford have given us no idea of what it's likely to cost when it gets here. Have you got any thoughts about what it might cost once it lands on New Zealand Ford dealerships?
Great, another good question. Looking at the pricing here in the UK, the fully this was I had the extended range, so
Mm.
all-wheel drive extended range, and this is £57,000. So conversion would be, 100 and
About
110,
120.
$120,000,
Mm.
which a lot of people are going to say that's expensive for a Ford, I would assume, but it's probably 10, 20 grand more than, well, no, I think that what's a Mustang now, 70, 75 there.
Mhm.
So there is a premium, but your 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 saving is going to be great once you get over that initial fee.
Yeah, if you're comparing it to say a Jaguar I-Pace, I mean it's definitely less. I mean
Absolutely.
that's the case, and I guess they go right down to kind of a standard range rear wheel drive version as well, don't
Yes, they
they? That
do.
would
Yeah. So, and that would be,
potentially bring that entry price down.
yeah, that would probably come
Now,
in a lot less. The actual, funny you should say about the I-Pace, the rear quarter of the Mustang is very Jaguar-esque. Um, I think the design is sort of there. I, it's nice.
yeah, yeah. Historically, Jaguar and Ford design has been a little bit incestuous, I think,
Yeah,
kind of harking back to when there was some shared ownership and a few shared designers floating
I
around.
think you're right.
Uh,
Oh, the frunk
Now
the
you
frunk is really good as well. It's drainable. I have to say this.
Oh, wow.
So you can actually
The
fill it with ice and use it as an ice bucket. Um,
But what's the relevance of that? Because don't the UK and don't the Brits normally like their beer warm?
well, yeah, good point. So yeah, maybe you can put some heated stuff in there. But you're right, actually. Yeah,
No, no, no. I've lived there. They say that, but let's face it, you all drink nice cold lagers.
yeah, nice cider, but we're not allowed to talk cars and alcohol, right?
Oh, of course, of course, of course. Now, you've been driving something else as well, something that's a lot closer to landing in New Zealand, and that's the BMW iX3. Now, they're both kind of SUVs and roughly the same size range. I suspect the same price range when it lands here in New Zealand, but they're a slightly different kind of vehicle, aren't they? Tell us about your experience with the iX3.
Yeah, the iX3 is very much, for those that have been driven the X3. It's virtually the same in size and appearance, and also interior layout. It's You're virtually no difference. If you've driven one of those, you'd be able to hop into this and drive it no differently. Size wise, as I say, it's probably the size of the old X5. So as the X3 has grown in size, it's very similar in there. It is slightly larger than the Mustang, uh, in overall volume. um,
Mm.
and
And it's more of that kind of traditional upright SUV as well, isn't it?
correct. Yes,
It's
yeah.
that
There's
kind of
less,
tall boy setup.
yeah, definitely less sleekness to it,
Mhm.
but it doesn't detract from how good it is.
Mm. And it is good. You did like it?
Yeah, I'm actually I've still got it for another couple of days. So so it's a chunky, big SUV style electric vehicle. I don't, it's hard to put it in words, which I've got to put it in words, obviously, when I write it up. But it's it's a substantial vehicle, and feels well made, feels BMW-ish. Well, it feels very BMW-ish, and it's a very enjoyable drive. I
Mm.
hard to hard to nail it, but for those that have driven a new X3 will just adore it.
Mm. And it's good to hear you say that it's well made because, of course, I think globally they all come out of China, don't they? So it's a Chinese built BMW electric SUV.
You would never know where it came from, to be honest.
Mm.
It's as good as anything that's come out of Germany or anywhere else or out of the States. It's
Mm.
very, there's a nice satisfying thud on the door on the way through. Nothing seems to be out of place. It seems very robust and very BMW-ish. It's
Mm.
also comes with
Yeah,
everything inside. It's all, it's still got the gesture control, the Hey BMW. It's very well appointed.
mhm. Now, unlike pretty much everything else in that segment, they've kind of gone, I guess, the efficient route rather than the outright performance and handling route, and it's only rear wheel drive and rear motor setup. Is that correct?
That is a great question. It feels all-wheel drive, but I would have to double check that. It feels if if yeah, I do have to double check that. It feels all around
It's
well.
impre- it, it's impressive. It's tricked you. Yeah, they're rear wheel drive only, so
Okay.
they must have set dialed that vehicle in pretty well then
Yes, they have, and
to
you can push it well into corners, and it's handling really nice. It's haven't managed to get it to back end to kick out, which is probably a good thing. There's a lot of speed cameras around. Yeah,
I guess it seems a little more true to form to have a BMW as a rear-wheel drive. Anyway, I mean,
true.
iX3 I think shocked a few people when it came. Sorry, i3 I think shocked a few people when it came out as a rear-wheel drive, similar kind of setup. But yeah, I think BMW arguably I think did the right thing there because it's going to be more efficient. It's going to make it cheaper to build, and hopefully mean that it gets electric vehicles into more people's hands by going in that direction. And do you feel it's like almost a bit of a stopgap car because we've got the iX and the iX4 coming out at the same time, which are kind of fully developed, dedicated BEV vehicles. I mean, do you think the iX3 is a bit of a compliant stopgap, or do you think it feels like a really good electric vehicle in its own right?
It feels like a really. I was lucky enough to see the iX in the flesh while I was down picking up the iX3. The
Mm,
iX feels or looks more X5 in size, so it is a little bit more, again, more substantial. The front is going to be very polarizing. It's I've had quite a lot of people on Instagrams, shocked at its face. They're not. It's a bit like the M3. People are really either going to like it or hate it, and it's very very polarizing. The interior looks outstanding, so I think there's definitely more development gone into the iX rather than the iX3. The iX3 is probably what you'd call just an X3 that they've changed the powertrain on. So I think
mhm,
you could say there's less thought that's gone into it. It's kind of more of a traditional, okay, let's, diesel, petrol, or electric or hybrid.
mm,
Um, and the iX3 is sorry, the iX is more of uh, a new, well thought out vehicle. But that doesn't detract from the iX3 being a very substantial, good electric vehicle in its own right. I wouldn't be upset of having that on my driveway, right, which is on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
driveway right now.
Well, I guess we'd be to touch on the same points as the Mustang. I mean, range, performance.
Yeah,
Any numbers around that you've got for us?
range 461 kilometers, 210 kilowatts, 400 newton meters of torque, 6.80 to 100, so slightly slower. Um, as far as recharge rates, they're claiming 10 to 80 in 32 minutes on a 150,
Mm,
and consumable rates of 18.9 to 21 kilowatt hours. So
yeah.
um, pretty substantial in range. You're not. There's no range anxiety as far as it goes. Again, from here it's roughly 100 330 miles. So very similar in actual range and usage.
Yeah, I think it's nice with the iX3 to see a vehicle that I think is set up to for that efficiency, that consistency of mileage, rather than just outright chasing performance. And they're trying to do their own thing, not just try and make something that can chase after a Model 3. And I think that's exactly what the market needs, to be honest.
Yeah.
Mm.
Design
Have you got any
wise, they've
thoughts
got
on
these.
price?
Sorry.
Have you got any thoughts on price?
It's actually hard to find at the moment.
Mm.
I get a feeling it's
Yeah,
going to
having
be.
it.
I think it's a gut feel. I think it's going to be around the 120 again.
Yeah, it's kind of got a slot in the market underneath the e-tron. Otherwise, it's just you might as well go for an e-tron. It's kind of my theory.
Design wise, there's a lot of blue tinges to the iX3. So the on off button is blue. There's plenty of blue tinges around the face, and references to it being an electric vehicle. The the kidney grills are sort of boxed off. The 19 or 20-inch wheels are very aerodynamic, so they've sort of blocked out those. So again, it's easy to spot that it's an electric vehicle.
Yeah, yeah. And you get a lot of those signs, just aero efficiency. That's yeah.
Correct.
I love the sound of the iX3. I'm almost more excited about the iX3 than I am about the Mustang. I mean, the Mustang is cool, but I think the iX3 to me sounds like just more in my vein.
Yeah, I agree.
Efficient, interesting engineering.
Yeah, absolutely. However, the Mustang turns more heads on the road.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
I think the iX3 seems to blend in more as a BMW, an X3, whereas the Mustang seems to attract more of a what is that rather than anything else.
hmm Oh, well, I feel that you want. I can see which one you want, and I can see which one I want, and it's great that we're finally getting those choices there in the market to actually have differing opinions.
Well, particularly because they're very similar in range, they're very similar in size. They're one's a little bit more, a little bit quicker off the mark. There's the Mustang is an all-wheel drive in this variant, so
Mm,
they're different. They're the same but different, if that makes sense.
mm, mm, mm. Excellent. Well, look, thank you so much for telling us about your experiences with those cars. I'm sure everyone's looking really forward to reading about them as well in the October issues of EVs and Beyond magazine. So, look, thank you, Dave McLeod. Have a safe trip back to New Zealand. We're glad that you managed to get a spot to come back in, and we'll see you back on the road here fairly soon.
Cool. Thanks for having me.